Hi, my name is Princess Jefferson, and this is my oral argument video reflection. The first case that I would like to talk to you about is People v. Baines, case number 77, which was heard before the New York Court of Appeals, the highest court of New York, on September 13th, 2022. This case concerned a defendant who had been charged with various sexual-related crimes, but in this oral argument, the court was more so concerned about the procedural matters at hand and whether or not the defendant was aware of the harms associated with pro se counsel. In this case, the first thing that I observed was the defendant's counsel's opening argument, where I felt that he did a great job of pointing out that there were two fundamental issues both under state and federal law. However, that was the extent to what I gained about his argument, as the judges immediately went into questioning, and I felt that that harmed or impeded on my ability to assess whether or not either counsel was able to offer a substantive argument, as I felt like the judges didn't necessarily wait for answers to be given. They kept asking questions, cutting off counsel as they tried to attempt to answer these questions. And so it was kind of hard to determine who was the winner in this case, whether or not they had a firm grasp on the substance of the arguments. And so that made it really easy for me to determine that, while I could use this case to maybe make sure that my brief doesn't necessarily have holes in them and that I'm able to anticipate specific questions, I was unable to really take anything from that oral argument in terms of how I would like to present when I give my oral argument in November. The second case that I would like to discuss is called Hartsfeld v. SO, consolidated for oral argument with case number 210812, Troth v. KE. This case number specifically was 2108-111, which was heard before the Supreme Court of Texas, the highest court in Texas, on September 20th, 2022. This case was about whether or not public universities in Texas are allowed to revoke degrees once they've been given to former students. I loved everything about this oral argument from the moment that the petitioner opened up his case, where he relied on no case notes. He had a clear demand of the courtroom, a different level of comfort behind the podium. It was so very clear that he knew that the argument that he wanted to make, his roadmap was clear, easy to follow, and unlike the initial oral argument that I listened to, where I was kind of unable to follow because there were no facts given, and because the judges kind of questioned for, to me, a little too long, that I was unable to ever fully understand what was going on. To me, the judges in this case gave a perfect balance of questions and allowed both the petitioner, his counsel, and the respondent's counsel to answer and give their arguments, where I had a full understanding of what was going on the entire time. And in that, I was able to truly judge whether or not the counsels had an understanding of the law, could fully articulate the points that they were trying to make. And in that respect, I fully believe the petitioner was the clear winner in this second oral argument. There was just a difference in the way that he presented his case. When the judges asked him questions and posed hypotheticals, he didn't shy away from the answers. Even if he didn't necessarily have an answer or didn't anticipate that question coming, he was able to bounce back and dig deeper into maybe an initial case by the Supreme Court of Texas. Whereas the respondents, though they presented a good case, I felt like they lacked a different level of deference before the court that didn't necessarily happen by the petitioner in this case. They seemed a little bit more arrogant, that they were trying to make sure that their theme of an invasion of privacy and perhaps an intrusion onto property rights once someone has been given a degree, that they kind of, to me, lost sight of maybe giving the level of respect that was, to me, demanded when you go into this type of courtroom. When I think about the attire, I felt that I loved that both parties, to me, were more on the conservative side, which is also something that I observed in the initial oral argument. However, I was a little shocked that, to me, the petitioner in the second oral argument wore a spotted tie, which a red one at that. I didn't think that that was appropriate for court. But aside of that, I think that both of these oral arguments gave me great ground to take for both my oral argument and my brief. And specifically, one thing that I would like to take from the second oral argument is structuring my argument in such a way that it is so very clear what I'm arguing. What is my strongest point? What case law am I going to use? How does that refute a point made by the opposing counsel? And those were things that I observed in the second oral argument, which I thought were beautiful. I would also like to use something that I saw in this case going into my oral argument, which is relying on the questions made by the judges and even their hypotheticals to support the claim that I am trying to make, and to show that a decision in my favor will indeed have the most benefit on society. And with that being said, this is the close of my oral argument video reflection. Thank you for your time.